Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 5, Episode 24, Impak Nor. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we're great. We're awesome. We're a good time, and you will enjoy discussing this 30-year-old show with us. Hopefully, we bring you some insight. Hopefully, we bring you something that you can laugh about with other people as well. But in anything, any case, just share with us. Um, Feel free to give us any comments that you wish, either on our videos on YouTube, or if you have something that you want to talk about with us directly, you can, of course, reach out to us through any of the social media channels that we have. Typically, Facebook would be the best for that. But sure, we'd love to hear from you. So as David said, tonight we are talking about the episode Empok Nor. An intense episode, a dramatic episode, and one that gives us a little bit of insight into the development of the character of not just Miles O'Brien, but also Garrick. Two characters that we don't really see put together a whole lot. And so then all of a sudden we get a lot of them, and it's an interesting perspective, I feel, that they give us for these two characters. So can't wait to talk about that with David and, of course, you all as well. So, before we can dive into all that, of course, I like to do a little, checking in because it's been a little bit since we have been here. We've had some things going on, of course. So, David, how has your week been?
It's been good. I finished reading the third book of the Three Body Problem trilogy. Interesting book series. It's not one that I would say is like my favorite. It's not like they're bad; they're good, but they're certainly unique. And the way the third one ends felt to me a lot like the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. Have you seen that one, Perry? Do you
I
remember how
have
that
seen that
one?
movie. I have seen
Okay,
that movie.
that one ends in a kind of weird way, right? Just kind of gets a little bizarre
It
at the end.
does. Yes. The end is the beginning kind of feel. Yeah.
It's not quite as bizarre as 2001, but it had a similar feel to me. And I have to say, I didn't care for the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey, so I didn't hate the end of this book, but it certainly felt similar to that. I don't know how much it was inspired by that finale of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but seeing as how they're both interested in similar subjects, basically the universe, alien life, what does it mean to be human, they kind of come to similar conclusions, I would say. So yeah, interesting. Uh, yeah, so that's what I finished this week. Next week, I will have begun reading part one of Edward Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. It's a 6 volume set, so I'm only going to read one volume at a time, take breaks in between. But I've had this for over a year. I'm trying to find a good time to get into it, and I'm thinking before I read book 6 of The Expanse with you, I'll read that. Take me about a week or so, maybe
Okay.
2 weeks, who knows? But and then I think by then you'll probably be done with The Expanse
I
book
was gonna
6.
say, yeah. So
Are you
I'm on
almost
chapter
there?
10. I'm on chapter
Oh,
10.
okay,
Last time we did an episode and we talked, I had just started episode 3, so I kind of got into a run there,
right,
and got a lot of reading done, and I was quite proud of myself for
okay,
that. Um, it's interesting because what I'm doing is I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between audio book and actual book because I love like reading the book myself and
mhm,
kind of doing the pictures in my head and my own voices, I guess, whatever. But listening to the audiobook is certainly interesting, and I'm mainly doing that because that's how my brother-in-law has been consuming these books, and
mhm,
so I just wanted to see like what his perspective would be on that. So that's been kind of interesting going back and forth. It's really helped me out. Like for example, I've taken to I get up early and we'll go for like walks around the neighborhood and stuff like that. So like on the walk, I can listen
mhm,
to the book, and then of course when I have time or there's something I'm sitting for or whatever it is, I can actually read the book. So that's really been helping, and I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, either one of those. I will now advocate for both mediums to get this series done. Either read the book itself or do the audiobook. You can find those. Like I'm on Spotify, so I know
Mhm,
that they're all there. I did a check just recently. All the
mhm.
book, even that book that you got me, the one that has all those short stories and stuff.
Yeah,
That
mhm,
one is on there as
yeah.
well. So yeah, if you want to dive into the series, of course, that would be a great way to do it. And then, of course, you have the series on Amazon that's just waiting for you as well. I'm still holding out hope that they're going to come back and do some more of this show. It still gets talked about. There's still a lot of, buzz about it. And if you do any kind of checking in with the actors, none of them have given up on coming back and doing more
Yeah.
of the show. So it's possible.
Come
Uh,
on,
at this
Bezos.
point, yeah, at this point, the show has been out of production for what? 3 years? Is it 3 years, four
I
years?
think the last season technically came out 2022, so it's
Okay, so
been 2-ish
been two
years,
years.
but, I mean, if you're saying out of production, then I guess, I mean, it was probably produced in 21, and now we're in
Yeah.
24, so
So, but safe to say it's been off the air for 2 years. So there's still, there's still time. They can still go back and do things,
Right,
and we won't have noticed much of a massive change in our characters. Stuff. There's nothing
right,
worse than when they decide they're going to go back and do something for a show like that, but it's been like 15 years,
right.
and then you're having to struggle with the time gap or whatever. So I hope they don't do that. But yeah, it still gets talked about. So hopefully that happens. In the meantime, while I have been reading that, I also started reading the autobiography of Patrick Stewart,
Oh.
it
Oh,
just
right.
came out.
Yes, I've
It
seen it,
just
yeah,
came out. It's called Making It So,
yep.
and it's his whole life. And if you want to get the audiobook, he's reading it. So if
Nice.
you want to hear
That's
his voice,
mhm,
you can go and do that. I listened to the first chapter, and I have to admit, when I first started listening to him,
mhm.
I didn't want to. After
Oh, yeah?
obviously he's an older man. There's no denying that, and so his
Uh-huh.
voice, of course, has changed. So if you're going into this after have watched Next Generation, and you're going into this expecting to hear that greet you, it is not that. He is significantly older from when
Right,
he did the show. So just be aware, because I mean, I don't know why it was an issue, but I mean, the thing about that too is, you know, he settles into a pattern, and it certainly becomes more enjoyable to listen to as he goes on. So there's that. I found it very interesting. Him talking about his life, when he was born. He was born in July of 1940, and then he just recounts everything, obviously from there. It's his autobiography, so of course. But
yeah.
I mean, the guy's got some very interesting stuff in the first chapter alone. So if you're interested, go and check it out. Again, you can get the audiobook on Spotify, pretty much anywhere that does audiobooks. I'm sure it's available. And of course, the book itself is out. You can order it through Amazon. That's, where I saw it and so forth. So
Mhm.
yeah, check that out. Um, Other than that,
Cool.
I've been pretty much holding steady with work. Everything's going pretty good here, so we don't have to worry about any of that stuff, and we can just finally turn our attention to why we're all really here, right? No one cares about this other stuff per se. Um, oh, before I forget, the final season of Star Trek Discovery has debuted. We are now up to episode 4 as of this broadcast. Episode 4. Well, actually, by the time this is released, we'll be at episode 5.
Mhm,
Um, I have to admit, I'm enjoying it. The shows. It seems like they are intent on going out with a bang on this one.
mhm,
They're still working on the Section 31 movie. There's no word yet if there's going to be any tie-ins to Discovery into the movie. I don't see why there would be any, because I mean the main character did come from Discovery, but I think they're trying to make a departure from that as much as possible.
mhm,
There is another Trek movie project in the works. There has been so far no discussion as to what it's about, who's going to be in it, what it's going to be tied to in any way. Is it going to feature that J.J. Abrams reboot cast of the original series or not. None of that has been mentioned at all. There is another project in the works. So I don't even want to begin to speculate per se as to what it could be. My hope would be that it would be it's the launching of a totally new Trek product. I would love to see them do that in a big way. Instead of us having to do like a TV show or something like that, I would rather them do a movie first that tells the origin story of the subsequent TV show that's going to come out next. I
Right.
would love for that to happen. Establish your characters, get all their backstory stuff and everything out of the way with a big movie production, and then transition that into an all new TV show. I don't think that's going to happen, but to me, that would be great because it would eliminate the need for prequels. I'm so tired of the prequel genre in general. I hate it. I want to move past it. I want people to start doing new things now, new stuff. Give us new stuff.
Right.
So that will be my hope. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Gotcha.
So yeah, done with that now. On to Empok Nor. So this is the what,
Maybe
third
fourth.
to last? Yeah, I was
Yep.
gonna say second to last, third to last episode
Third.
of
Yep.
our season. Rolling right along here, and again, great entry here into our canon. Would you like to give the recap of the episode, or do you want me to do
Sure.
it?
Yeah, I can do it.
Go for it.
Alrighty. Okay, so Impak Nor starts off in Quarks, as many things do, and he's having trouble keeping patrons because Chief O'Brien and his nephew Nog are working on fixing some components on Deep Space Nine. It turns out that they need something to be replaced, but they can't make it in the replicators themselves. And of course, they don't have any good relationship with any Cardassians right now. So they just determined that the best way to get the parts they need is to go to another of the Cardassian stations that has the exact same setup as this one that has been abandoned, called Impak Nor, the name of our episode. So Nog, O'Brien take a team of security officers and other engineers and bring along Garrick to help them disable any sabotage or booby traps that the Cardassians might have left on the station. When they get there, they unfortunately activate some sleep modules.
Sleeper agents. Yeah.
Yeah, there are these three agents that were left on the station. One of them who has died, but two of them are awakened to defend the station. It's later revealed that they were somehow pumped up with some sort of drug that made them xenophobic or alien phobic. Non-Cardassian aggressive. Aggressive to non-Cardassians, and so they basically take out the various crew members one by one. So there's a total of 7 in the group: O'Brien, Nog, Garrick, and then 4 others. The first team is taken out by the 2 Cardassians, and Garrick decides to go off and kind of hunt the hunters in order to defend himself and the others against the threat. He is able to take out one of the other Cardassians, but when he goes to take out the other guy kills one of the engineers from the second group before the security officer can defend him. And then when Garrett kills the Cardassian, he then kills the last of the security team himself. He stabs him. It turns out that Garrick has been basically dosed with whatever drug that was affecting the other 2 Cardassians. And now, hyped up on this drug, he taunts O'Brien and Nog, captures Nog, and basically taunts O'Brien into confronting him to in some sort of fight to the death. O'Brien has rigs his tricorder to explode, and that explosion almost kills Garrick, certainly knocks him out, allowing O'Brien to gain the upper hand. They take Garrick back to the station, and Bashir helps Garrick kind of get that drug out of his system. And that's basically the episode. Pretty simple
Yes.
explanations for us tonight. We can go to the details, obviously. So,
Absolutely. Yes, that is kind of the salient details here for us, and obviously we're going to get into it. But as always, David. as our resident first time viewer. What did you think of this episode?
This episode fell for the classic trope. Let's split up.
Yes, divide and get conquered, right?
Yes, exactly. And later in the episode, after everyone else but Nog is dead and they're being hunted by Garrick, he says, I should have uh, gone after the Cardassians that were hunting us. I should have been aggressive. I should have taken the
Yeah,
offensive.
should have done it right away.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
Garrick had been insinuating that from early on during the trip to the station. Garrick was playing Nog in a Cardassian game, and Garrick was berating Nog for playing like a Ferengi as opposed to playing like a Cardassian. Cardassians being more aggressive. The game is meant to be played aggressively, and then he used that uh, opportunity to goad O'Brien. Because if you remember O'Brien's history, O'Brien, before he was even on TNG, had been a part of a crew and had history with the Cardassian Wars from previous.
I I am so glad that you brought that up because
Yes.
we were going to talk about it. Let's do a deep dive into the most important person in all of Trek history, as he's called by the lower decks crews and fandom.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, Miles O'Brien is a very interesting character in the Star Trek canon because he starts off as a non-com. Okay, yes, we do see him in the pilot episode of the Next Generation. He's a nobody battle bridge officer who he doesn't even have a name in the episode. He's just
Mhm.
there and then gone. Who later we see him as a recurring character. Obviously, he gets referenced, and now we see him thrust into the spotlight here in D Space Nine.
Right.
Now, in reference to what Garrick is calling him the whole time, the hero of Setlik 3, the hero of Setlik 3. This is something that we actually first get referenced in the Star Trek Next Generation episode, The Wounded, where Captain Ben Maxwell has gone rogue on his ship and is striking at the Cardassians behind in their territory, in their
Right.
borders. And we find out that there was the Setlik 3 massacre in which the Cardassians had, basically laid waste to the Setlik 3 settlement. O'Brien had fought several engagements there. Ultimately, he was able to save himself and 12 other officers and various other civilians due to his technical skill with a transporter. This is what caught the eye of Maxwell, who then promoted him to tactical officer on the USS Rutledge. And then later on, this is what eventually transitions O'Brien into engineering and service, where he then gets to the Enterprise, then to Deep Space Nine, and then becoming the chief.
Mm.
Okay, um, that episode in particular, The Wounded, where they're hunting Maxwell, there is a great scene in there where O'Brien is in 10 forward, and one of the Cardassians comes up to him and sits down next to him and tries to like share a drink, and they have this conversation. And
Actually,
there's
I
a
think it's
blind.
O'Brien who sits down with him, to be frank, but keep going.
No,
Yes.
no, it's the other way
Isn't
around.
it? Oh,
The
okay. All
Cardassian
right.
comes
I'm
up to
wrong.
him.
All right. Fine. Fine.
So, so the part of it that I always loved was the end, where O'Brien tells his whole story and he talks about what happened to him and everything else. And he says to the Cardassian, um,
I
"I'm
don't
not.
hate what I did to you.
Yeah, I hate what I became because of you." And
Yes.
I've always loved that part. I've always loved that particular scene because it's one of those things that y- I've never fought in a war. Okay, but I can, we hear all the stories of soldiers who come home and they have PTSD and they've got all these things that are wrong with them and the hard time they have adjusting back to civilian life after having been not just in the military but having seen combat, been deployed, doing all these horrible things in the name of their country and saving people's lives and so
Right.
forth. And to hear it in such a succinct way, it really was kind of an eye opener. Again, as a younger person watching it, and even now looking back on it, I just really love the way he put that because I can see how that would affect, people, soldiers coming back. Like, yeah, they were not that person when they left. They were not these, hardened, distant individuals. They
Mhm.
became that way because of the job that they had to do
Right.
for our safety. And so I just really always appreciated that. And so now here we are, flash forward, he's on Deep Space Nine. He's living this life as an engineer, and he's vastly different from that Setlik 3 massacre. Then he was just kind of a nobody junior, not even an officer, and now all these years later, he's a family man. He's got a wife, he's got two kids now. He's been enjoying that, comfy engineer frustration of technology not working kind of
Mhm.
life. And here is Garrick constantly reminding him and throwing in his face that he has this history as a warrior, as a soldier, as a fighter, something that he's definitely been trying to put down for a couple of decades at the very least.
Mhm.
And I also that's why I love this episode so much, because we do get to a point where he says to him, um, he keeps saying it, I'm an engineer, I'm an engineer, I'm an engineer, and then he proves it at the end, because that's how he defeats Garrick, not by being a soldier, not by being this bloodthirsty warrior that Garrick is trying to make him be. He gets him because he's an engineer, and he sets a trap for him
Right.
and almost kills him, but still
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah, the final scene of the episode when he's talking to Garrick, Garrick says, "Yeah, I could have died," and O'Brien says, well, "That actually was the plan." So,
Yeah.
um, the fact that you lived with just some broken ribs is actually, you're lucky. I have a feeling that Cardassian biology is a little bit more robust with their kind of hardened exoskeletal type. Maybe it's more for show in some ways. It doesn't actually accomplish much in actuality. But yeah, yeah, it was engineering that we saved the day,
Yes,
just like
yes,
on set like three, not soldiering as it were.
right.
So
And so then let's shift our focus a little bit to the composition of Garrick here, since we are talking about Cardassian physiology. Um, Garrick is a character who from the get-go was always in the shadows. Again, what's an episode we've talked about many times, where he steps out of the shadows to offer a third solution on the station early on in like season 1 or 2. And they were talking about the Cone Ma and turning him over from the Duras sisters and whatever. I forget what that episode was called. But yeah, Garrick just kind of appearing and having this, he's got this information, he's got this thing that he can offer that no one else can really seem to offer. And it's just like, how does Garrick have the information that he does? He's
right,
just a plain and simple tailor, as he constantly reminds us. And so
right,
now here we've brought him along on this mission. And not only it does it make sense because he's a Cardassian, and the Cardassian booby traps would be set up in such a way that they wouldn't kill a Cardassian. But even still, he has these precise knowledge to know where they are and how to defuse them. And let's keep in mind, Empok Nor, the station that mirrors Terok Nor, or Deep Space Nine as we now call it, was established and apparently inhabited up to a year prior to them going there. So it was up
right,
and running for quite some time. We don't know how much
right,
time, but it's been up and running for quite some time until about a year ago. And they're saying that the Kardashians pulled out. So that means all of the tech, all of the booby traps, everything else would be recent up to a year ago. Garrick, who, as far as we know, hasn't even been to Cardassia in several years, has somehow managed to maintain the necessary knowledge and skill set to diffuse this technology. Like, all of our technology changes, all of our stuff changes. You mean to tell me if we were to take a person right now who we isolated for, let's just say, 5 years, if we took them and completely isolated them from the development of technology for 5 years, and then brought them out and said, here, and laid out the most recent tech that had come out in 5 years, you mean to tell me that person would not only know how to know what it is, but know how to operate it proficiently? There's no way.
I don't know.
And that's just 5 years.
I mean,
That's just
Garrick's
5
kind of
years.
a genius, isn't he? He's supposed to be someone who's
Mm,
kind of
yeah,
savvy about stuff.
sure. But again, that makes him anything but a tailor. And then, of course,
Yeah.
we have these super soldiers who have been in these stasis chambers, and who are also doped up on whatever the Cardassian version of amphetamine is apparently. Um, they get out, and Garrick is able to track them and kill them.
Hmm.
Yes, he becomes infected, but he's still able to expertly do so, set traps for them, and set traps for the Starfleet officers as well,
Right.
and take them out. So Garrick clearly has a skill set that
Yes.
we still haven't pinned down. Here we are coming up on the end of season 5, and we still haven't pinned down exactly. I mean, I guess it's always been assumed. We're just going to go with it. Garrick was a spy. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
absolutely a spy,
100%.
but it's never
Assassin.
outwardly set. Spy, assassin, yes, so
Yeah.
forth. So the game Kotra, after watching the scenes and after having them talk about it, did you want to play it? Did it
I'd
make
be
you want
down.
to play it?
Yeah, I always love a good game. You might remember that a couple of weeks ago, probably like 2 months ago now, I was with some friends and we played that all day board game, that kind of thing. So I'm down. In fact, what I was thinking about when I was watching it, it was like this game has so many pieces on the board. It looks like it's too just filled with stuff. It looks like it's a little too cluttered. In fact, I think in the first scene where we seen Garrett play it, like the actor playing Garrick accidentally like drops something and like knocks a piece off during the episode. I wasn't fully paying attention in that moment. I just I glancingly saw something happen. I thought maybe that's what I saw. I didn't go back and check myself, but he finds pieces on the ground later on. He says, "Oh, the former goal of the station had a set, but all the pieces were across the floor." And then later, when O'Brien comes through, he knocks the board over and he knocks the pieces flying.
Mm,
And I was just laughing because I mean, I imagine it's interesting because it's not chess, but it's got a kind of a it's got
it's
a very thin.
yeah,
It's wide but thin this way.
yeah.
Very wide board but thin. It was interesting. I'm curious how it would be played. Has someone put up a rule set for it? Do you know?
I don't know that anyone has gone through and done the work to come up with a game that we could call Kotra and make it happen.
Right.
Unlike the three-dimensional chess from Trek lore, which has been made and remade, and you can buy a set right now if you wanted to. You could buy a three-dimensional chess set. Kotra has definitely remained a bit obscure. There
Hmm.
are some links to some images of the game, which I'll actually post in our episode here, so people can take a
Hmm.
look, and if you want to, see if you can figure it out. I don't think they talk about it enough in Trek for anybody to really be able to see um like established rules or to come up with any kind of gameplay for it. But hey,
Hmm.
who knows? There might be some industrious individual out there who can take the few excerpts of dialogue that do exist about the game and from the pictures of it and figure it out. I know that it's got something to do with dice, and you roll and you got to figure out how to move your pieces. There's a bunch of script on there. Don't know what each of those means. I'm sure someone out there has probably already figured it out and made a game.
Right.
But who knows?
Yeah. The
It
one
would,
thing
it,
I
it would have, I will say this, it does something for me that a lot of the stuff on Deep Space Nine does. It makes me want it because I love the design. I like the way that it looks. So
yeah.
if someone could like make a model of the game, nothing flimsy. I don't want some, crappy plastic that falls apart or whatever, but a legit jeweled model even. I would love
Yeah.
to. I would have
Yeah.
that, and I would just have it on display always because it's
Yeah.
pretty
I don't know
to
what
say
the
the
rules
least.
are, but it looks pretty.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I don't know what the rules are. It's just like so many things from this show that they're beautiful props. I
Right.
have no idea how they work, but I want them. Like that
Right.
clock that Cisco makes.
Mm.
Um,
That was season
the
one.
yeah, the Durania that Kira uses when she's mourning the passing of Vedic Bario. That thing, I would love to have that. There's just so many things like that, a part of the architecture that of the station even that I really enjoy. So
Right.
yeah, this is Yet another one. Great job, set designers, prop designers. You've got me interested.
Right. Yeah. When Nog was playing with him at the beginning, I thought maybe Nog was going to win the game. It was going to be some example of Nog has, because he's a Ferengi, has brought about some new strategy and defeats Garrick, and Garrick would be all shocked and I can't believe that a Ferengi could have learned the game, would have done something kind of like that. But instead, the scene is used to again bring up O'Brien's past. He says to O'Brien, "Once I defeat Nog here, I want to play you. You're the one
Mhm.
who actually has the temperament to play the game because of what you did on Sark Nor. I'm sorry, Setlik. Setlik 3. So yeah, the game is a great way to keep the story going, to introduce plot, which is smart. Find ways to get characters talking, have them do something that gets them thinking about something else, and they bring up plot points all by themselves. And they used it throughout the episode. The rule of three played because it was brought up three times. So, um, but the best scene though the whole episode was when Garrick was in the infirmary baiting the trap. He wanted to fight the two other Cardassians, so he was in there and he was saying loudly, denied, denied. It's all the
Access
same thing.
denied.
Access to
Access denied.
yes,
Is that all you can say is access denied?
right.
Yeah.
And the first Cardassian comes in there to kill him. And I'll say briefly, I don't know how Garrick got into that like coffin like chamber without making any noise in between the guy coming after him. Whatever. Garrick is a spy assassin. He can move quietly, fine. But the best part of that scene was when the guy was coming down the stairs. The heavy eyebrows they give them because of their the forehead ridges and everything.
Hmm.
The lighting was perfect, and you might remember this, Perry. His eyes were black. There was nothing. It was the
Hmm.
most just creepy look. Not
Yes.
creepy in like in some like like disgusting way, but in like this guy has no
That
soul.
right.
There's no eyes.
That demon manic. It was the perfect
Yeah.
filming to let you know this guy was death and he was
Yes.
stalking.
Yeah.
We had gone from these were super soldiers to yeah, this was the demon in the night sneaking up on Garrick
Yeah.
here. So
It was a
yeah.
great visual. And I imagine it was one of those things where they didn't like plan on it per se. It just came out perfect the day of filming. Because right after that happens, the guy walks forward and the lights actually do hit his eyes. But at that point, we're actually in his shoes. We're with
Mm,
him as we don't know where Garrick is. So we actually transition to his point of view. But before that, oh man, he looked evil. He looked soulless. He looked good. I was like, that's a great visual. That was probably my favorite scene of the episode.
oh yeah. Great scene. Um, I have to admit, my favorite scenes were when the security officers got taken out.
Yeah,
And the reason is they were insufferable. Like they were annoying me the whole time. We've got the whiny, wimpy Bolian who won't be quiet.
right.
Why? And he's just, oh well, they were supposed to be. Oh God, I hate that character, and that character
Yeah,
shows up in so many things,
yeah.
especially like war movies of a type.
Hmm.
They always have the one guy who is chickening out for some reason, is questioning things, and it bothers me because I just feel like if you're this deep into military service of any kind, shouldn't we have already weeded these people out? Like, why are you like? I know I get it. He's not a full on, tactical officer or whatever, but
Right.
he's still in Starfleet. They still know what could happen here, and for him to be so weak in the knees about moving forward is annoying. Just like on the other side of that, the braggadocious, bravado-ridden, lunkhead tactical officer also annoys me, which is what we see out of the other two. They're just like, huh,
Mhm.
well, oh, these are the Cardassian First Order assassins. Well, let me take a crack at them. They ain't got
Yeah,
nothing on. Sorry, it's like, okay, well, we know you're now gonna die. Like, I mean,
yeah,
you just like shut up. You play your
yeah,
hand too hard. Like, we all know that a smart officer, a smart person who especially if you've been trained in multiple tactics and across multiple species.
Hmm.
For you to be so cocky is, well, it's annoying. It's just downright annoying. So I was ready for them to go, and
Yeah.
then they went with such ease. Like, now,
Hmm.
that's another part of 90s Trek that has always bothered me. You want me to believe that your tactical officers are these just the best of the best, these hardened, whatever, and then they get smacked a couple of times in there and they're out, down for the
Yeah.
count. No, no fight. I
Yep.
mean, they used to do it with war for all the time, and it annoyed the crap out of me.
Yep.
And then here and there, even in this one, one guy just, I mean, he puts the phaser down, and that allows the Bolian to get killed. And when he
Yeah. I
turns to
it's
face the guy, he doesn't even try to shoot or stop him or
Yeah.
anything. He just stands there, and Garrett
Oh.
shoots him. Right. And then the chick gets, basically, she's picked up and tossed over the railing.
Yep.
I'm just like,
Yep.
no sense of awareness. You already knew that these people had escaped. You already knew that they were incredibly dangerous.
Right.
How did you let them get the drop on you? Both of you, both
Right.
times. Like, there wasn't no one of you that could have at least got a shot off, wounded him, shot him in the leg, something.
Right.
Do something besides just be, you know, oh, that's how they always denoted back then that the person was extra dangerous, was that they had these characters talk up their prowess and
Right.
then get laid low.
Right.
I hate that. I hate that. I would
Yeah.
never, if I was a director doing a TV show or anything like that today, I would never do that. I want my guys to get some shots in, get some shots in. And
Well,
that to me would highlight the danger. If even
I
after getting their shots in, they still get taken
I
down.
totally understand. I even agree with you to extent, but I would imagine what they would say in response is, "Why did the character act this way?" Is probably like, "Well, we if these characters are gonna die, it'd be better for our audience not to like them. So when they're dead, they don't care too much." So
But
maybe
see,
that was the
but,
reason.
but see, that's I understand. I can understand that to a certain degree. But on the other hand, it's like I feel like the more you can get your audience invested in your characters, the more you will get them invested in your show overall.
Right.
And so, yeah, to me, I want to be invested in the character, not because they're these overly emotional bleeding hearts who cry about every little thing or whatever the situation may be, but
Right.
because they're talented, they're competent in their jobs, they make
Right.
sense, they're
Yeah.
smart,
Yeah.
they're quick, and it makes you like them because they have a competence level that exceeds the other people that are around them. That's why we're watching them. They are special because not only are they good at their job, they're the best at their job. So when an external threat comes in, I need to see that for at least a little bit of time, they can handle that threat.
Right.
And it's not until the threat becomes overwhelming and some reason, like maybe the reason that they're like the one officer, excuse me, name I forget what his name is, but he's talking about the other one, the lady that dies first. I think her name is Stoltz, and he's talking about how great she was in hand-to-hand combat. It's like, you mean
Right.
the hand-to-hand combat that maybe could have saved her life that we didn't get to see any of? And
Right.
he's talking about how she was his sparring partner and how she had taught him so many different things and everything else. And then again, he gets totally wasted. We didn't see
Yeah.
any of it. I
Yeah.
would have loved to see them both like put up a fight, be skillful, be and then to show that the only reason that they lost was because they were dealing with these super amped up Cardassians who maybe Cardassians are already stronger than humans, but then because of the stuff that was going through their bodies, they were even stronger. So their
Right.
best blows, best strikes had no effect, and the guy just
Right.
picks her up and hurls her over the balcony or whatever it is.
Right.
That would have been better for me. It would, instead of it being, oh, she's surprised and he jumped on her back and lifted her up, and
Threw
the
her
other guy who,
over. Yeah.
yeah, and the other guy who puts his weapon, I will never forgive him for that. He puts his weapon down.
Right.
Yes, the Bolian asked him for a tool or whatever. He
Right.
could have kicked it over to him. He could have
Right.
told him, no, I'm here to watch your back, not help
Right.
you do the job.
Right.
Crawl out, get it. Yes, minor inconvenience. You're going to have to crawl out and get the tool that you need. But
Right.
if he had crawled out, he wouldn't have been under there for the Cardassian to come
To
in and
stomp
step
his.
on him. Right.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
so many things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I have a lot of comments to make on everything you just said. So I'll start with this. Yeah, the woman who dies because she gets thrown over the edge. Her character had the gun pointed at the other guy, and when he says, "Don't point it at me," she's like, "I have the safety on." Like, I'm not a gun guy, but I know enough about guns and gun safety that that scene was ridiculous. Anyone, any military person, I mean, maybe it's the future, but just the idea that someone who has a professional relationship with weaponry would so casually just hold their gun and in such a way that the other person would say, "Hey, please don't," it made her look incompetent actually. Um, then the only two of those four characters that had any sort of personality as we got to know them were the blue skinned guy. What is his race called?
Bolian.
Bolian. We had the Bolian, and we had the other human, the first human to die. He gets dragged through a glass thing. That was a good scare.
I was gonna say that was probably the best execution or
Yes,
the best.
best death.
Yes, best death that we saw this whole episode, bar none.
Yeah,
It came out of nowhere. It was shocking. It was loud.
it was
It was
shocking.
perfect.
The reason it was good, a good kill, is because you thought the guy, like, the character was introduced earlier on the runabout when he's giving O'Brien the rundown of what they're gonna get, and on the bottom of the list is like souvenirs, like
Souvenirs, trophies.
trophies.
Yes.
And O'Brien's like, "We're not here for that. Get that off the list. Stop it." And then throughout the episode, we find out that he likes collecting souvenirs, basically. Well, Homeboy knows that they're in a deadly situation, is afraid that someone's in the room because the elevator just moved, and she's off to go find out what made it move. And he sees something in the over there.
Ooh,
And he's like,
something shiny.
"Oh,
Yeah.
pretty!"
Ooh,
He's like a
shiny.
moth to a flame. And so the guy doesn't jump out from like behind the door and grab him as he goes toward the door. He grabs him from like the glass. He shatters the glass, grabs him, drags him in. Great, like, he's dead, kind of death. I mean, this is probably the scariest in terms of like straight up like violence. We got people, being killed. Episode. I mean, I'm sure we've seen others. I mean,
Mhm.
the TNG movie, First Contact, was probably the closest to that, at least recently,
Mm.
of what I've seen. But anyway, yeah, his character was a little bit simple, but the Bolian guy, when the camera started following those four around when they got on the runabout, I was like, oh no. Usually if a camera starts following a character around, it's to let us know that this is a bad dude and we're
Mhm.
gonna watch him sabotage something. So I was a little concerned that maybe a changeling was among the group and they were actually going to be bringing along a changeling who needed something on the station, and it was going to turn into the changeling is now haunting the station and they have to do something with it. But that quickly turned into not being the case. When the runabout got shot away and destroyed, I was like, oh, wow, okay, we're going serious here, because I didn't know what to expect when they first started the episode. I was like, they're going to go
Okay.
to the station. There's going to be some sort of conflict. What's it going to be? Uh, when it turned out to be there are two Cardassians on the station, I was thinking, okay, maybe the plot is going to be that this station was actually some sort of secret base, and there's some sort of secret weapon or secret technology here, and that's why they left these guys behind in case someone tried to take it, and they don't want the Dominion to know about it, and so it turns out that this is going to be like they find some sort of secret weapon there
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
they use against the Dominion in the future. I don't know, something. So when it
Yeah.
actually turned into Garrick's gone crazy, it made sense in the sense that Garrick is a character we know, and having conflict with a character we know versus one of our other cast members is interesting. But in this case, leaving Garrick as effectively a murderer, yes, he's drugged up, but he kills a guy, he kidnaps Nog, he wants to kill O'Brien, he's kind of lost it. Um, I mean, it means that Garrick is no longer a character. I mean, yes, we can trust him because Star Trek isn't going to give away his character. But I mean, Garrick is now. Leave it this way: he says to O'Brien, "I no one distrusts me. Everyone likes me. Everyone thinks they're okay around me." And O'Brien's like, "Well, I won't invite you to dinner. How about that?" And he's like, "I appreciate it." like, so this episode almost had to like make Garrick violent and dangerous again because he'd lost that mystique.
Yes.
But I'm worried. I
That's.
worry if they went too far.
I think that was part of the point was that they
Yeah.
wanted to establish that Garrick is not the friend that we think that he is. He um yeah, I guess over time it happens with a lot of things with humans. I know I'm guilty of it at times. When you're around something a lot, you become complacent,
Mhm.
and no matter how dangerous it may be, we stop thinking of it as dangerous because it's around us all the time. How many stories have we heard in the course of our lives of people who are mauled by pets? I mean, literally everything. Has attacked a person at some point. I remember growing up, there was the famous story of the woman who had a chimpanzee as a pet, and it went crazy and destroyed her face one day. This chimp that she had been raising since it was an infant,
Right.
so she was very familiar with it, and it ultimately it still attacked her. How many people have we heard about who had, pet tigers, and things like that, that then later on maul them?
Yeah.
Or there wasn't there a story recently of a woman who had an elephant or something like that as a pet, and it trampled her. Um, but she had been abusing the animal, from what I understand. She had been abusing the animal, and it had trampled her. She died, and then again, to just add insult to injury, she died. They were doing her funeral, and the elephant showed up at the funeral and trampled her again. So, yeah, it,
Oh man,
yeah,
talk about a vendetta. Oh my gosh.
yes.
Woo. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, we become so complacent with dangerous things, and it just makes absolutely no sense. But I mean, but it happens. Um, Now, this story in particular, it had a couple of different versions before we got to this final version. The first version of this episode was actually going to feature Worf and Garrick. And it was going to be Worf and Garrick returning from something
Mhm.
on a runabout when they come across a seemingly derelict Cardassian warship. Beam
Ah.
aboard the ship and find most of the crew or all of the crew is dead, and they're
Right.
trying to piece together what happened while also trying to salvage the ship because obviously we are in wartime here, and having a Cardassian warship with all of its records and everything else would be quite the grab for Federation intelligence.
Right.
During that time, something happens which then pits Worf and Garrick against each other, and we see a true showdown between these two. Something that was teased in an earlier episode
Right.
of I think this season, but we never really got to see much of.
Yeah.
The next draft did feature O'Brien and Garrick, but it was more one-sided towards Garrick. We didn't have much of a backstory with O'Brien, and it really just felt kind of forced. So it wasn't until they started bringing in the Setlik 3 history and playing into O'Brien's background that the story got a bit more development and ultimately became what we saw.
Right.
Andrew Robinson, who plays Garrick, did initially object to the episode, mainly
Mm.
because he didn't want to play another psycho killer. And I
Oh.
do say another because he was already famous for kind of perfecting that crazed look, crazed killer genre there, all the way back in the 70s when he had played that in a movie, and
Dirty
didn't want
Harry.
to. Yes, Dirty
Okay.
Harry movie with Clint Eastwood. Didn't want to do that kind of thing again, and apparently he had been avoiding it for pretty much ever since. And so he was kind of dismayed when they brought him the script, and he was seen, back playing that kind of character again. But
Okay.
obviously he did it, and he kind of came around and did enjoy the final result. So at least we got that. Got this for that, and hopefully he can look back at the episode now and see that it's actually quite a good episode overall. Um, none of our major characters from the rest of the show really do anything. We get to see them very briefly. Dax, Worf, Kira, they're all together.
Right.
Cisco and Odo are together. We don't see Jake this episode, and then of course Nog is with us as well,
Right.
practicing his
Cadet.
soldiering skills
Mhm.
while he's being a cadet. So
Yeah. Don't call me sir, or else I'll. What did you say? O'Brien say to him, like, if you call me sir one more time, I'll kick you off my team or something.
mm,
Yes, yes, chief.
yes, Chief. Yeah. So, I mean, I really love the setup of this episode. I love the way that it went from being seemingly innocuous. So we're going to run over to the abandoned station, get some parts, come back. It didn't really seem like much of anything, and then it, was ticked up instantly, almost instantly. They turn on the station lights. Everybody's doing their jobs. Nog runs back to the runabout to see it's floating away in space, and then not
Yeah.
only is it floating away, it blows up. It's
Right.
like, you know. And I will say this about Cardassian design: what is it that makes it to where a person coming through the airlock can enter in a code or flick a switch, and the entire station power comes back on. And with a few presses of a button, Garrick is able to activate the gravity and turn on all the lights on the station. We see this from
Sure.
his position.
Yeah.
That's terrible design. That's a terrible design. There's no way that should happen. Okay. Um, I know that they did it because it's supposed to give us that false sense of security that the lights are working. We all feel safer when the lights are
I'm
on.
home.
Right. But to me, it was like, no. I could understand maybe he's able to activate like a localized gravity field so that
Right.
you're in the airlock and can move through into the interior of the station, get
Right.
to a computer console, and then turn it on. But he did it right there in the airlock, and I was just like, no, didn't like that at all.
Yep.
But talking since we are talking about Empok Nor, the fact there's a whole other station not that far away, relatively close to
Mhm.
them,
Mhm.
in the what did they say, the Cestus, the Celestis system, wherever that is. Apparently, it's not that far. I mean, I was just like, why don't y'all? Okay, sleeper agents trying to kill everybody, notwithstanding. Why don't y'all send uh, a fleet of runabouts to
Mhm.
haul that thing back? And
Mhm.
now you've got two stations, double the
That'd be kind of
personnel,
brilliant, actually.
double the firepower. You can put it on one on each side of the
It's
wormhole,
orbiting the planet.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One on each side of the wormhole.
That would have been pretty awesome. That would have been
Create a choke
amazing.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
create a choke point for ships coming through. Okay, well, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, instead of having one station defend this whole area, you got two.
Right.
That to me, that was just like, yeah, I'm just reading that in the comments there. Salvage rights, absolutely, it was abandoned.
Yeah.
You've already taken one Cardassian station, so you clearly don't have a problem with taking another one. And
Right.
think of that, the way that you'd be able to restaff
Well,
it and stock it so quickly.
wasn't that one taken in the transferal of Bajoran power back to the Bajorans? Like you get to keep the station because it's here already, kind of thing.
Well, essentially, no, because what happened was the Cardassians decided to pull out of the Bajoran sector. And so they were basically fleeing and they abandoned it, kind of like how it sounds like Empok Nor was abandoned. They pulled out of the sector. They
Did they when they left though? Did they leave without terms, or did they leave? Did they leave with some sort of terms in place, or am I not remembering correctly? Did
on
they
Deep
truly
Space Nine.
abandon Bajor? Did they abandon Bajor? Or they
Yeah,
strategically
that's
withdrew. They didn't. Did they strategically
it's
withdraw or
so so
tactically withdraw?
it was always it depends on who you're talking to. To
Sure.
the Bajorans, after fighting for 50 years through oppression and the occupation and so forth, they finally threw off the yoke of their oppressors and
Right.
kicked them off their planet and took back what was theirs and then some. To the
Right.
Cardassians, we'd strip mine the planet bare. There was nothing else we could get from these backward people, and we were already fighting a war elsewhere. So we decided to withdraw from this area and focus our energies and efforts elsewhere.
Elsewhere. Right.
And so, yeah, it depends on who you talk to as to what story you're going to get as to what happened. But either way, we're from what we're told in the setup of the episode, Empok Nor is kind of the same. They had the base up to a year ago. It was fully crewed and manned, and then they pulled out of the sector. No one knows why they pulled out of the sector, but they did. So they had totally abandoned it, and it had been abandoned for a year.
Right.
So to me, that's just like, okay, you're clearly keeping tabs on the Cardassians. You know that they abandoned it a year ago. It's just been sitting there for a year. I could understand not going over there like 2 weeks after they abandoned it, but it's been a year now.
Yeah.
There's no way I would leave a base like that you know the capabilities of because you're in its duplicate,
Right.
you know, just sitting out there.
Right.
No way. I'd go get
Yeah.
it. I would
Yeah.
absolutely go get it.
and take it back. That'd be an
and just
interesting
yeah.
theory. How could they do that? Because I mean, it's bigger than like the Enterprise. So if you were to use a runabout or even a starship, how would it, tractor beam it? How would it drag it along? How would that work?
Well, remember in the pilot episode of Deep Space Nine, they moved the space station.
Oh, that's
It was
right.
it
The
was not
one
there.
time they ever moved it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was not there.
Yeah.
So a
Just like the one
combination
time
of
the Enterprise ever split with the
hmm
saucer from the rest of the
yeah.
ship was the pilot episode. Yeah.
What was that? They did it again for Best of Both Worlds. Um,
Did they? They
so
probably
yeah.
did. Yeah.
hmm
Okay.
Um,
No, you're right. Yeah, they did do it a second time.
and
Yeah.
they did it
Okay.
in Generations as well, the movie. So there
Okay,
you
3
go.
times. I'm wrong 3 times.
I was trying to let it pass, but my inner nerd
Inner
wasn't gonna let
Trekkie,
you. Yeah, it
your,
wasn't gonna let you say
that
that.
trivia,
Mhm,
Trek
mhm.
mind of yours wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
stifle it long enough.
but yeah, I still think they
Talking
should have done it. Should have
Yeah,
should have gone
well,
both.
talking about the station, the Impact Nor is one thing I thought was funny is when they come upon the station in the runabout, it's at an angle. It's like it's lost in space and it's at an angle. But I'm like, that's never happened ever before. Like the runabout could have come at it at this angle. And then later on in the episode, when like they're giving us a wide shot of the station, it's still at that angle, to show us that
The
there's something
derelict,
wrong.
and
Yeah, it's
it's
derelict, it's
derelict.
abandoned.
Mhm.
I just laughed because it's like it's only at that angle for us, the audience's sake. They could have come at it the
Because
angle.
because what's up and what's down? You're in
Yeah,
space. You
yeah.
orient yourself relative to
Oh,
whatever it is that you're flying at.
exactly.
There's
Yeah,
there's no reason. As far as we're concerned, every time we see the Defiant flying through space, it's flying like this or it's
yeah.
upside down. We have
Right,
nothing around us that would tell us otherwise,
right.
and we orient ourselves based upon gravity. Like we know up and down because we're on a planet and we have gravity. Once you're in space, all that is out the window. So yeah, that makes absolutely no sense. When they depart from Deep Space Nine and take off, the
Uh-huh.
only way that that makes sense is if they rose straight up off of the space station and flew in a perfectly straight line. They
Yep,
never deviated, they never
yep,
curved, they never turned, they never did anything. They would
yep.
have had to fly perfectly straight so that that way they were maintaining the exact same axis from Deep Space Nine
Right,
to Empire Nor.
right,
Why anyone would fly like that makes no sense.
right.
Now, why wouldn't it? To me, it makes more sense that when ships are in space, as they approach any body, right? Another ship, a planet, whatever it is, they would automatically orient themselves based upon the setup of the ship or the poles of the planet that they're approaching. Once the
Right,
north and south pole have been identified, the ship would orient itself automatically to those.
right,
Whatever that's how that would work. Once the bridge has been identified on a ship, it would automatically orient itself to make it, top and bottom or whatever.
right.
But yeah, that's it. That's the only part of it that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I just laughed every time I saw it because it was
Oh yeah.
so obvious that's what was going on. So,
Mm.
but it
Which the
was
other
when it first showed up on screen, I didn't recognize it. I knew it was supposed to be another Deep Space Nine. Basically, it's just
mhm.
it's not. What's Deep Space Nine's name? Not Star
Terracnor.
Terracnor. I knew it was another Terracnor, Impactnor. Um, but it took me a second to recognize it because it was at the angle when it first showed up, which that was kind of fun. It was at a distance, it's wrong
Mm.
angle. Anyway,
Which that theory that I was just saying about how the ships and things would automatically orient themselves to each other, it actually now that explains why Empok Nor appeared to be on its side. Because Empok Nor was powered down. So it wasn't sending out any signal for the runabout to recognize to orient itself so that had it had power as the runabout approached, the ship would have automatically adjusted itself to make it appear right side up. Since the station was powered down, no signal, no need
right.
to orient itself, so it pulled up and it was like, "Oh, we're wrong."
Right, right.
Yeah, I like that. That works for me. Okay, well, coming up on the end of our time here for this episode, any final thoughts you have? Did you like this episode? We should ask.
Um, like I said at the beginning of the episode, the whole let's split up mechanic felt just kind of dumb. So the whole time I was like, you guys are idiots. You guys
Yeah.
should have stuck together as a team, all seven of you, or let Garrett go off, let the six of you hang out and take care of one task at a time. Now, it would have made sense if they said, we have to do all three of these tasks because there's a timer, or if we abandon one of these stations that we need to fix, then they'll sabotage it when we leave it. We can't do it one at a time because we need them all done basically at the same time. If they had given me a real good reason for why they have to split up, I would have accepted
Hmm.
it more. But I'm going to take Garrick and Nog, the two most important characters beside myself in this series. I was like, yeah, these guys are dead. They're goners. Scooby Doo ain't got nothing on these guys. They are dead as doorknobs. We just got to wait to find out how they die. Um, I was actually more curious if they were actually going to commit to killing them as opposed to something else. Um, so I, so for that reason, I wasn't all that thrilled with it because I was like, I can kind of see what's going to happen before it happens. But
Hmm.
there's some fun stuff. And again, Garrick actually murdering a dude, like,
Straight up stabbed him.
oh, yep, and not like in a oops kind of way, but like a I'm having so much fun kind of way. I was like, okay. I mean, he's always been on edge towards psychopath, but he went there. Like
Absolutely.
Tropic Thunder says, never go full sociopath.
Um, I would say I really enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I
Yeah,
like the way that they were able to weave O'Brien's backstory into this
that was
and
well
give
done.
us
Yeah,
another perspective on the character. I really enjoyed that, and I my only critique would be I feel like they should have brought more people. It's always a failure in Trek and stuff, and I know that there's budgetary, like out of universe budgetary reasons we don't have that
I
many
will simply
people,
say it's
whatever.
not just a Star Trek problem, but keep going. Yeah,
But yeah, but they all these shows that have these kind of seemingly innocuous missions, it always comes down to the fact that they brought far too few people.
hmm
With the mission and what they needed and all that stuff, they should have brought more techs really to get this done. They should have brought more security personnel to
right,
watch over things. Someone should have been stationed at the runabout at the very least.
right,
Shouldn't have left it unguarded. You didn't know it. You already were aware that the station was potentially booby trapped, but why was there no one guarding your only means of
yeah,
not only of travel, of escape, but also of basic communication back to the station to
right.
signal for help? You were
Why weren't
instantly
two
cut off.
runabouts sent? Why was
Right,
could they really fit all the parts they needed just to one runabout? Even if they
right.
could, shouldn't two be sent? Yeah, I agree. I would just say that it probably was a budgetary thing. I watched the show Vikings with my roommate. I didn't watch the whole series because I anyway. No, not my point. There were certain battle scenes that they would do, and they were trying their hardest to do them. And I'm sure a lot of people love the show, but there were some battle scenes where they have what felt like 20 people fighting 20 other people, and it was like these are supposed to represent like battle scenes, like big fights, and it feels like a
Mm.
bunch of guys got together on our weekend and just played Civil War reenactment almost. Like this is there's not enough people to make this believable. You need like hundreds of people to make this believable, but they're having to do with what they can do. So yeah, they're the budget writing. You got to get through the characters as fast as possible. You're not going to stay a
Yeah,
lot of time with you only have 40 minutes to make an episode. So
right.
I get it, but I agree that that's a fair critique. Where's the
Now,
team?
right. Now, a quick question was asked here: is O'Brien's reticence to engage militarily make him partially responsible for the deaths, or is this bad leadership? Um, I think the whole point, from my take anyway, my whole point of a lot of what they do in this episode is to make it seem like, at least for the two characters we see, O'Brien and Garrick, neither of them is really responsible for these deaths.
Right,
If you're going to say anybody is responsible, it would be Garrick. But even as Bashir points out at the end of the episode, Garrick was a different person. He was under the influence of whatever psychotropic drugs, whatever.
right,
I was going to say earlier in talking about that, that's not something that would hold up for us in court. I don't care how doped up you are. You murder someone, you're still going to get some kind of punishment
yep.
for that.
hmm
There's just, as far as I know, in the United States, there's never been a case where someone has been like, "Oh, I was hopped up on anything, and
Yeah.
we're like, "Oh, okay, go to the hospital and you get a pass
Yeah.
and you're home." That's
Yeah.
never
We just need you to
happened.
write a report. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, true. And that's also why I think this episode feels a little bit flat for me. Is I feel like the consequences of the episode are high up there, especially with Garrick, and it because it was such
Yeah.
a high thing they did, it's hard for them to reconcile it, go back to the status quo. Episodes usually end with things going back to the way they
And
were.
And they
Um,
tried to placate us a little bit at the end there too, because they say, O'Brien comes in and says, "Hey, there's going to be an investigation. There's going to be a
right,
whatever," but we don't get to see that. That's something that we assume will happen sometime between the ending of this episode and the next time we see Garrick. If we see him in the next episode or wherever that is,
right,
but again, between now and then, that's when that will be done, and it's just going to be assumed when we see him, it was taken care of somehow.
right.
He's not in jail.
Or like Cisco's girlfriend, whose name I don't remember at the moment. What's her name again?
Cassidy.
Cassidy. She was a Maquis gun runner, or not gun runner exactly. She was working with the Maquis. She got caught. She got 6 months. Like slap on the wrist. Oop.
No, no.
It wasn't a
She
six
got
months.
she got 2 years.
No, it
Cassidy
was
got
it was
2 years.
months. I remember because she's back later, like in the next season. She came back. That was her reunion
I'm
episode with Cisco.
almost positive Cassidy Yates was sentenced to 2 years.
I mean, if you can, I feel very strongly it was not. It was
Okay,
months. It
give
was
me a
like
minute.
six
We're
months,
gonna
but
before we end this episode.
gotta figure it out. In the
Um,
meantime, while you look it up, I'll just answer that question about O'Brien. Is he responsible? His bad leadership wasn't on the military angle. It was in the let's split up angle, in my opinion. He didn't go there for a military purpose. He's not trained for military engagements. If anyone should have said something, was the security guys being like, "Hey," or Garrick being like, "Hey, this is a bad plan. Sorry, O'Brien, you might have been the leader before we came here, but now that this has turned into a hostile area, we have to make changes. We have to figure out how to get off the station." And O'Brien does say what he commands people to do is so they can get off the station, but none of them really seem to take the threat seriously. I mean, they realize that they have a threat on the station because someone sent their runabout to go just blow up. And Garrick finds the place where they had been hibernating or whatever. So yeah, mistakes were made, but I don't think it's because O'Brien was unwilling to confront the Cardassians. I think his solution was just a little bit naive. Well, maybe it is military because it's naive to say that I told you it was 6 months.
hey,
I said it was 6 months.
I was gonna
Uh,
let you finish, and then I was gonna tell you. All right,
all right. I will come back to it.
Jesus, the man
Anyway,
he can't wait to tell me I'm wrong. Look at him, look at him.
hey, you're Mister Star Trek knowledge over
Hey,
here.
hey, you know what? We all
Uh,
have lapses. All right,
yeah, fair
Jesus.
enough, fair enough. Anyway, my point is that he did make O'Brien made mistakes as the leader of this group, and it was that they didn't stick together and defend each other. In like we have like one person acting as the sole guardian of another person in a dark and abandoned facility. I don't think anyone could have done the job, frankly. So I'm not going to say it's a military failure per se because that's not his expertise. If anything, it proves that they should have sent someone along who was
Well,
like
it,
send Worf,
yeah,
send someone else like
I
that.
was just gonna say that Worf should have gone.
Yeah,
But this is like the classic failing of everything that we see in Trek when they come to this. There's such a low assumption of danger or that anyone would dare to challenge Starfleet officers. They're supposed to be so impressive from the moment they beam down and appear anywhere. Who would dare? And it's shocking when someone kills one of them or imprisons another one or whatever situation is. But it's like you guys don't learn from your history. I mean, you have from your own in-universe history, Kirk, Spock, and all the rest of them. It happened to them all the time.
yeah,
And as much as y'all talk about revering these guys and they're the greatest of the greats, the legends, did y'all actually study their reports and their history? Because if you did, there's no way that you would be beaming down to any planet without a 12-man deep armed team. There's no
Yeah.
if I was a captain, I'm not setting foot on a planet with just me and two other people. No
Right.
way.
Yeah.
I've got a whole security backup. Even if you take out half of them, I still got the other half
Right.
that will make sure that I make it back.
Yeah.
Not happening. I would not be sending a team of engineers and only two security guards to a recently decommissioned alien
Military base.
enemy
Yeah.
alien military base. There's
Where you
just no
already
way.
know they have booby traps and other
Right,
kinds of
you
things.
discussed it
Yeah.
before that. So if there's a failing anywhere,
Even
it's from
Odo would have been a
Cisco.
better choice to go along.
Right, because yeah, if there's a failing here, it's Cisco
Yeah,
for
that's
not
exactly
saying
it.
we
Yeah.
should send more people. And they've got the people. What's everybody doing? We see uh, um, Dax, Worf, and Kira. They're off work. They're trying to have lunch together. For
Right.
Pete's sake, there's no reason you couldn't have called one of them to go on this
Right.
mission and supervise and just
Yeah.
be another set of eyes there. That would have made perfect sense.
Yeah.
Send more security. Yeah, that was the failing there. That was Cisco's fault.
Right.
And then if we're going to say that O'Brien failed in anything, O'Brien even admits his own failure in the fact that he didn't, when they became aware of the threat, he did not immediately go on the defensive and try to figure that situation out. But he was
Mhm.
already keyed up to not be a soldier because Garrick had been needling them the whole time. So he
Mhm.
was so eager to get lost in being an engineer again that he didn't take the threat seriously. That's his failing. So yeah, um, interesting way to look at it for sure. And yeah, anytime anybody gives us questions, if we have the time and the ability, which of course we have the time and ability, we're going to address them. So yeah, thanks for that, Vincent. He's been contributing there in our chat that we've got going on our episode. And again, anybody can do so. But I think that will effectively do it for us. Great way to close out um, our episode tonight. So with that being said, of course, you can find us and follow us anywhere you happen to do your social medias. We, of course, are more responsive on Facebook, giving up entirely on Twitter, X. We can just call it the colossal trash heap because I'm just not going to go there anymore. I posted one thing the other day. I posted one thing, and instead of it like opening up and allowing people to like make comments and whatever else, because it was for our show, it was just a series of ads that appeared below it, and it's just you had to scroll like 10 things past before you could get to a point where you saw a legitimate comment. And I just that annoys me. So yeah, won't be doing that anymore. So yeah, if you have anything else you want to reach out to us, do it through Facebook. We can get to you there. You can listen to us anywhere you happen to listen to podcasts. I happen to do it on Spotify, and of course, you can watch us every single week on our YouTube channel, which is of course the Fire Caves. So guys, until next week, I want to say thank you again and take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.